I've wanted to get this story off my chest for a while. I've told a few people here and there, but it really doesn't give me any closure as to what happened, and holy hell, was this damn creepy. Where the hell do I begin? Well, first off, my name is Dakota. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah, and I've lived here all my life. I live in the city, but I love the outdoors during the summer. I'm always out hiking with friends or fishing and camping. It's the thing to do. One of my best friends, we'll call him George, would always talk to me about his father's property out in Duchenne. They had a few acres with trailers and RVs scattered around this little sandy cliffside that they lived next to that would actually drop you down into a canyon if you were brave enough to trek. He would always tell me about the freedom they had out there. You could go shooting wherever you wanted, even stand outside your own home butt naked and no one would give a damn, because no one is around to see you. Anyway, back to the story. So George had invited me to go out to his father's property with him and was really excited to go since I had never actually been out toward Duchenne. The drive there from Salt Lake City is about an hour and a half to about 2 hours away, so it's a decent drive. When we arrived, I was pleasantly surprised to see his property was exactly as he explained it to me, and I absolutely loved it and couldn't wait to get out and explore. I should remind you that his property was in the middle of nowhere, right off of an old closed highway and up a hill, seriously in complete dry barren wilderness. There are cougars, bears, coyotes, rattlesnakes, and plenty of other animals that wouldn't mind making you their lunch. But even so, we had plenty of firearms there to make sure nothing would happen. And that's another thing I need you to remember. We were armed to the teeth with firearms. George had just recently bought an 18-inch sawed-off 12-gauge double-barreled shotgun, as well as an AK-47. His dad also owned a plethora of other weapons, which included a 30-30-300 Ultra Mag, 12-gauge pump-action 24-inch long-barrel double-barrel, and plenty of other handguns and revolvers, so there was no fear of anything happening on our trip. I think we were there for about 3 or 4 days, just having a ton of fun target shooting and hunting rabbits and snakes. But the last night we were there, some really weird stuff happened to us. I still cannot explain to anyone exactly what happened and what I saw. I'm sorry I've been dragging this out. I just really needed to explain how candid we were about this. We really just thought we were going on a little vacation to get away from everything. Then we would be home and that was that. Holy hell, was I wrong though. So that last night we were there, George, his father, and I had been drinking and playing poker and just having a fun time when me and George decided to head up to the trailer where we could just hang out together and reminisce about the old days. We get to the trailer and mind you, he has his AK-47 and I'm holding on to his sawed-off shotgun. George decides to call his girlfriend back in Salt Lake City to see how she was doing, and I didn't think anything of it at all, until for some reason, while we were on the phone, she had brought up the subject of a Wendigo. Us being out in the middle of nowhere and kind of getting creeped out, we told her to cut it out and quit trying to scare us because we had this dumb belief that if you mentioned a Wendigo, that you would just be stalked by it, even though we knew that they're just myths. As George is speaking with his girlfriend on the phone, I'm lying on this half sofa type deal right next to the wide open window on the right side of the trailer, and I swear to God I was seeing what looked like a person in the distance, in the shrubbery, and small trees walking back and forth, almost trying to conceal themselves, but not doing a very good job. At this point I tell George what I'm seeing, and he starts to worry his girlfriend because she's hearing us talk out loud about how we think we're being watched. Again, this is right after the mentioning of a Wendigo. George gets off the phone with his girlfriend and just now reminds me that the trailer we were in did not have a lock on it. I'm like, what the hell, dude? Let's get the hell out of here, or at least get to a trailer we can lock. As I'm saying this, I noticed that the figure had gotten closer to the trailer, and I got a better look at who or what it was. One thing that I saw that I literally have burned into my brain was the thing's neck. It was way too long to be a normal human. It stretched out and almost caused its head to bob around like a weight on the top of a loose spring. Once I saw this, he wasn't against leaving, but mentioned that we would have to go outside where the guy was if we wanted to get anywhere, and so we made a very difficult choice. We only had a small electric lantern. It would only illuminate about 5 or 6 feet in front of us, and we're standing back to back with our weapons in hand, literally ready to shoot anything that gets close to us. We just circled back to back and circled around and around as we walked to the other trailer. It was about 50 yards away, and during that time we were completely hysterical. We didn't hear any footsteps following us or anything moving in the distance as we slowly but surely got to the other trailer. This is when the story gets kind of messed up. It still makes me sick just thinking about it. We finally got to the other trailer that had a lock, and we got in and we tried to be as silent as we could. We didn't want to even risk looking out the windows or moving the curtains to give away where we were at, even though they definitely knew where we were. About an hour passes and we think we're in the clear. The next thing we know, we are looking at the shadow of this thing standing directly in front of the moonlight, in front of the curtained window, standing completely still, no movement whatsoever. At this point, we are about to piss and crap our pants, all at the same time, when as soon as it was there, it was gone. We didn't see it move, didn't hear it or anything, just looked back after a second, and it was gone. The oddest thing happened after this though. I started to hear a pig. A damn pig. Like it was in its pen oinking up a storm, and I turned to George to ask him if he was hearing the same thing I was. We just hear the weird disembodied voice come from outside the trailer. Oink. Not like a pig, but a person. But this voice was sinister, like they wanted us to know they knew we were afraid, and it was said mockingly. I don't know if this really was just some guy in a weird getup just going around and terrorizing some random people's properties, or if it really was something else. I have no damn clue, but I never want to go back out there to find out. Let me start this off with some background information about myself before I share my encounter. I am a 24 female that has spent a majority of my life outdoors camping and hiking through wild terrain. I have also been studying zoology and biology for the last 6 years, and have been in close proximity to bobcats mid-hunt, protective mama bears, and territorial elk. I'm disclosing this because all of these experiences have been quite scary, but I have never been more terrified than I was the night I encountered an unknown entity in northern Arizona. In March of 2018, I decided to go on a back road drive with a friend of mine at about 2 a.m. That area is well known for the almost zero light pollution, which makes the night sky mesmerizing on a clear night, which that night was. The area I was driving in was thick pine forest, and I was on alert because of the large elk in the region. After about an hour, my friend and I made it to the paved road leading back towards home. The road was a T-shaped and we were stopped at a stop sign, taking a moment to update our playlist. I'm about to shift out of park when I look about 30 feet in front of me. I'm facing the pine tree line that my headlights are illuminating. The tree line sat along a 5-foot ridge that was parallel to the road I was going to turn onto. I noticed a door-sized block of my view that appeared to be warped. It appeared like one of those portals in space movies, but less intense. I could still see a distorted image in the forest behind the block. I sat there for a while and told my friend that I thought I was hallucinating. To clarify, I was not under the influence of any substance and hadn't been in almost a year at this point. I was concerned, and I was about to suggest they drive instead since my vision seemed to be impaired. That is until they told me that I wasn't hallucinating. They were witnessing the same thing without looking away from the block. We both described the exact same image, so at this point, I'm a bit freaked out. We're pretty logical people and didn't want to jump to any conclusions. There must be a rational answer, so of course, we do what sane people do in the dark on a back road. We put my car in park and get out of the vehicle, I know, not smart. We kept my headlights on as we crossed the road heading towards the distorted block, and noticed that as we moved, the portal wasn't moving from its original spot, so it ruled out any kind of fumes possibly interfering. As I reached the ridge that the portal sat on top of, my friend stopped. He said that it didn't feel right and that he thought we should go back to the car. He is smarter than me. At that point, I was more intrigued than scared, and I was already within 10 feet of the thing, so might as well finish the job. I started walking up the 5-foot incline when I was filled with the most intense dread I had ever experienced. I could almost reach out and touch the warped doorway when my foot softly planted itself directly in front of it. At that exact moment, the most horrendous noise erupted. It sounded almost as if someone had dropped a metal tank out of thin air. It was the loudest metallic crash that I had ever heard. I was startled by the noise and lost my footing and slipped down the ridge and caught my footing right as I was next to my friend. We both looked at each other in scared confusion when the night air filled with what sounded like 36 coyotes calling. I'll admit, it's pretty common for coyotes to call out in groups. They're kind of known for it. But what's unusual about the specific situation was that the 36 coyote howls sounded like they were screeching in our ears. It was so loud that we had to cover our ears as we ran to my car. I felt like I was about to be attacked by all of them, and they were about to jump on me by how close their screams were. As I was running back across the street, I was looking around desperately for the coyotes to determine how many there were. But not a single one was in sight. As soon as we slammed and locked the doors of the car, the noise that was almost debilitating the moment before completely went silent. Nothing. Not a single peep. I looked up as I was shifting into drive and saw that the warped portal was now gone. Confirmed with my friend that he no longer saw it too, and drove the hell out of there. We got home in record time and ran inside my home and discussed what happened until the sun came up. We both encountered the exact same phenomenon out there on that road. We both saw the warped apparition and heard the same noises. We were both filled with a nauseating dread and were hysterical in what we had experienced. We couldn't solve it logically and we were desperate for answers. The next day, we started speaking with some friends who grew up in the local Navajo reservation. When we shared the experience, they were all convinced that we had encountered a skinwalker. When I first heard the term, I was sure that they were kidding, but they truly believed in this. They grew up with the warnings from their elders, so the fear they have for this thing is real. Some would even walk with blessed ash on their foreheads to discourage skinwalker encounters, a sort of protection charm. So I looked into other skinwalker encounters, and it's a real inconsistent mess of stories out there, but I have come across a few that are eerily similar to my own experience. Other people who don't think I'm crazy have suggested a possible alien encounter, their reason being the metallic clash that we heard. I'm not as convinced with this possibility, but I'm open-minded. If you have any insight, questions, or redirection in these theories, then please share with me. Of course, no one will really know for sure what I encountered, but I know that whatever it was in that forest was nothing that I've ever studied or come across before. I knew that I was in the presence of something supernatural, something that was dangerous. I know a lot of people who have had weird, unexplained things happen to them in the high desert regions, and now I know why they don't go out there alone anymore. A little background. I was serving a 15-year sentence in a penitentiary in southern Arizona. What I was in there for isn't important. During my stay, there were countless things that happened that no one could explain, and even more that no one wanted to know more about. It all started with a prison legend. Supposedly, years ago, something awful and unexplainable happened in the prison. Every morning, we'd be woken up and expected to stand near the front of our cells while the guards visually confirmed we were present and accounted for. Apparently, about a year before I got sent there, the most brutal and unexplainable thing happened during one of these routines. A man who had a cell to himself looks very off during the check. When a guard pulled over another guard to help him check it out, They found it wasn't actually the prisoner they were expecting at all. It was a totally different man. This man was wearing the skin of the other man over him, loosely fitting, draped over him. Apparently, it looked like a real monster. The scariest thing, though, was the guy wearing the skin was not an inmate. They had no idea how he even got into the prison, let alone a cell. What's worse is they couldn't even figure out who the hell he was. He wasn't documented anywhere, and what's worse than that, they never even found the body of the man of the skin he was wearing. Pretty grisly stuff, I know. And I realize that's not the go-to definition of a skinwalker, but that's what the prison called him, the skinwalker. Didn't help that the guy never talked. Anyway, that's what started the whole skinwalker superstition around the yard. Apparently, the guy got shipped to a different spot about a month after it happened, and just about everyone in Gen Pop felt all the better for it. I heard about the story on the second day of my stay. Hell of a story to hear in a place that'll be your home for the foreseeable future. Now on to the real stuff, though. Sure, that guy was the skinwalker, but all he did in the long run was get an old lifer Navajo inmate to tell everyone about actual skinwalker. It seemed like a lot of the prison culture actually revolved around them. Now apparently skinwalkers are tricky to point out on the spot, but if you manage to survive around one for more than a minute or two, almost everyone can tell the mannerisms are all off. They can mimic human speech but not replicate it. They twitch maniacally. They have an unnatural gait while walking. But apparently, they got better with experience. The old Navajo guy, his name was Carl, said that he was sure there was an actual one among the prisoners, slowly picking us off over the years. He called it the Grand Master Skinwalker. At one point, apparently, he thought it had human mannerisms down so well that you might not even be able to tell if it was your cellmate for a day or two. It had to be good, he posited one night. He would expect a skinwalker to jump at any opportunity for a kill, but this one realized it had a revolving door of people to kill coming to it, and masterfully bided its time, as Carl thought for years. A lot of guys found humor in it. A lot more were really on edge about it. Every once in a while in prison people snap. Sometimes you'll find your cellmate swinging in front of your bunk strung up around the neck by his pant leg. Sometimes you just can't take it anymore. But in our yard, people tended to snap in a very special way. It wouldn't be an outburst at dinner or a silent suicide in the night. Guys would just stop talking, hunch over and shuffle around. Any friendships they had would mostly be out of the window. They would turn into a loner during rec time. They would let their hair hang in front of their face. No one liked to talk about it. Like if they did, it would happen to them next. I felt the same way. I didn't know if it was a skinwalker or just people going crazy, but I didn't want to find out. It wasn't clockwork or anything, but every time someone snapped in this way, it wasn't more than a couple weeks before they were shipped off or transferred to God knows where without anyone else knowing beforehand. Then there were the nighttime occurrences. Short, loud bursts of a sound echoed through my cell block during all hours of the night on a regular basis. It sounded like a mix between pigs dying, squeals, and nails on a chalkboard. Just another thing no one liked to talk about. Even scarier were the shadows and footsteps. The block was dimly illuminated in the night by a few lights hanging from the ceiling outside the cells. I myself saw shadows flit across my walls on a regular occasion, when there were definitely no guards near my cell. One time near the end of my sentence, I woke up, looked at my back wall, and found a perfect silhouette of a person standing there. But when I looked, my bunkmate was asleep, and no one was outside my cell. Then the footsteps. Everyone hated the footsteps. They were the scariest part. In the night, sometimes more rarely than the shadows, you would hear ungodly fast footsteps. It sounded like wet feet slapping on tile floor. Whatever caused them would fly from one end of the block to the other in a dead sprint. Whatever it was inhumanly fast. If you happened to be awake before it started, by the time you heard the footsteps on one side of your cell and whipped your head around to see the thing run by, it sounded like it was 3 cells past you. Everyone hated the footsteps. I agree. I thought they were the worst. I was released from that place about a month ago, and I have more stories than I can count. I swear it was nearly my turn. About a week before I was discharged, my cellmate and a good friend of mine snapped. In the same kind of way, I didn't sleep for an entire week. Well, I did sleep, of course, but never for more than a few minutes at a time. Never turned my back on the guy. The scariest thing, I woke up one night to him somehow snaking his body through the bars of our cell. For reference, I couldn't get past my shoulder through them. The worst part, though, he was coming back into our cell. On the day of my release, I didn't say a word to him. Just left. He seemed fine with it, so was I. I had made it through 15 years of prison fights, gang disputes, and for all I know, skinwalker abductions. I left through the front gates a free man. As I walked along the fence for the rec yard, I spotted my cellmate, standing off on his own like he had for the last week or so. I shook my head, not even really sure if it was him anymore. I took one last look over the yard, this time from the other side of the fence. I wish I hadn't. There, standing off on his own, on the other side of the yard, was Carl, slouched over, eyeing the other inmates and twitching maniacally. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. And if you have an experience or a story to tell, feel free to email me at the address listed in the description. And remember, hell is empty and the devils are here.